All right, we are live. Here we go, back here on NLR together today. I am joined by Mr. Aaron M. Payne, also known as Bibliotheory on YouTube. Fantastic YouTube channel. Been a fan of yours for quite some time. We were just talking about that before we started. I remember some of those older videos, right? So, um, this is awesome, man. And we're
Mhm.
here primarily to talk about your book, because you are a recently first time published author, which is just fantastic. And I a little bit ago when Chris over the Bearded Book Beast interviewed you about it before the book came out, and I heard the pitch and just sort of some of what it was about, and I was just like, this sounds really cool. I gotta see if I can get in on this, and now here we
Mhm.
are, man. So first of all, let me just start. Thank you for taking the time, and I know you got a lot going on. You got a young child, and I imagine sleep is a premium, and we're doing this late at night, and I just appreciate you taking the time, sir.
No, thank you for having me on. I am excited to be on your channel because I know you're kind of rising up the ranks here in the booktube world. I see you
Yes.
just climbing that ladder, man. Nerd level rising, more like booktube level rising over here, man.
Exactly.
So you're doing
I love it.
fantastic. So thank you again
Thanks,
for
man.
having me on. It's a pleasure, of course, when anyone is interested in reading my debut. Because as you know, one of the hardest things to do as a debut author is just to have people be aware of your book. So you
Sure.
reaching out to me, I mean, that made me head over heels, man. So thank you so much for
There
being
you go. Of
interested, having me on. I'm looking forward to whatever you have for me tonight, man. I'm here.
course.
I'm
Yeah,
down.
man. Maybe that's a good place to start, right? It is, um, well, actually, I'll circle back to that, but maybe a better first place to start is let's talk about what your book is about, right? And I think let's keep the spoiler free today, just for people, who obviously have not read the book yet. But to me, when you talk, hey, then speak of the devil, right there.
There he
Uh,
is.
there he is. When I saw you guys' interview, and I was hearing this discussed as sort of like this fast-paced noir, cyberpunk, Batman vibes detective story, and I was just like, well, that sounds super cool, right? Like all those things, and there's like a robot dragon on the cover. The cover is so striking too. I love the cover art; it's
Hmm.
fantastic, and I think it does a really good job of selling the story. It really gives you the vibe of exactly what this is.
Hmm.
And I'd never read any cyberpunk before, so I
Oh,
was like,
really?
okay, yeah, I was like, okay, it could be cool. I've been interested, so let me give it a shot. And Britain's here. What's up, man? And so all that kind of pitch to me, yeah, NA sold, yeah, dude. It sounds super cool, right? And like it lived up to the hype. It was all of those things.
There we go.
So I guess my first question for you is like when you sat down to kind of work on this and put this on paper, how were each was each piece of that very intentional, or did you sit down with like maybe one part of that was intentional and it just sort of grew into this cool amalgamation of all these things?
Yeah, I think the Batman comparison always it puts me in awe, really, that people would even think about Batman related to this. So when um, Josh um, gave me that comparison, I was like, oh my god, yeah, thank you so much. I mean, Batman is just a classic franchise that anyone can relate
Sure.
to and think about. So that I was like, I'll take it, man. I will take that as a win. Thank you so much, Josh, for giving me that. So yeah, when I was first kind of approaching the story here, one, I knew I wanted to write a book in the cyberpunk genre because it is one of my favorite genres to read, to watch, to play. Because I'm a huge fan of Cyberpunk 2077, the game. Huge
Okay.
fan of
Yeah.
Blade Runner. Huge fan, of course, Edge Runners. So also, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick being what the book that was the adaptation version of Blade Runner. So I was just a huge fan of this genre, so I knew I wanted to write something in that. And the whole dragon component of it, that thing right there, that kind of came after the fact, after I just said, you know what, I'm just going to see what happens when I write something. Because I had an idea in my mind for a while. I was just like, let's just see what happens. And that actually became the first chapter, was that running scene.
Mhm.
And from there, it kind of just became a whole spider web of ideas in my mind of a whole 4-book potential series that I'm kind of slowly plotting out in my mind, working on book 2 right now. And really, the one thing I really wanted to focus on was the parenthood aspect of it, in terms of somebody just trying their absolute best to make sure that their family is cared for and provided for in a world that just wants to put you down, right? Because I wanted to be, one, fun, but also sort of relatable in terms of, parents today just trying to do their best for their children. So that's a little bit about it, and it was so much fun, man. It was so much fun to put it down, get it together, and I'm still kind of in shock that I even wrote the thing. Really, when I hold it, I'm like, oh, I did this? No way! I don't believe it.
Yeah. How cool is that, right? To have like the physical thing in your hand of this that was just in your mind before, and yes, there are dragons. They are, I would say, cyber dragons.
Boom!
See it right there,
Cyber
man.
dragons. Look at that.
Very cool. So it sounds like this was sort of you didn't sit down and outline everything super in depth, and then you have this blueprint to go through the whole thing. It sounds like it was a bit more discovery written. Is that right?
The first chapter was completely discovery, no plotting, no outline at all. After I wrote that first few paragraphs, that's when it started spinning in my mind, and I outlined the whole book from there.
Oh, nice.
And it
Okay.
just grew. But then I found out while writing book 2, in also writing book 1, I am really bad at sticking to outlines. So
Okay.
now I know I'm I guess what you call a pantser, right? In terms
Sure.
of just whatever comes into my mind when I'm writing the story.
Mhm.
And I have very loose ideas now in terms of where I want the story to go, in terms of major plot points, and even like the ending. Besides that, the story that main character goes on, it's whatever comes into my mind. And I feel like it's a lot of fun sometimes because, like, you don't know from day to day what you're going to think of and just imagine put inside the book. So
Mhm.
it's been a lot of fun. So,
Yeah, it seems. I mean, like reading it, you get that feeling like, oh, this seemed like it was really fun to write. Like it's just so punchy and so. There are things. I'm glad there's sequels coming, right? Because there's like, for example, like the nightclub. I'll just say that. That I was just like, I wanted another book this size just of that stuff happening, right? Like there was just so much cool stuff that you can explore in there, and it was over. That chapter was over, and the story had to move on, of course, right? But
mhm.
I was just like, I want more of that. It's like there's definitely cool corners of this that you can really dive in and explore,
Mhm.
and it just seemed really fun. And at the same, like it has all that fun and all the action, but at the same time, as you said, I think you did a really good job of grounding Soul, the main character. And I'm saying that right, correctly, right?
Yeah.
Saying
Mhm.
that correctly, right? I said that. Even that I said weird. Anyway, that he's very grounded and like he feels very relatable and realistic, and like the things that frustrate him, I'm just like, yeah, of course, like I would be frustrated too. Or the fact that he's doing all this for his family, right? Like you talked about, like the new parent thing, and I don't have kids, but I can imagine that it if I try to put myself in those shoes, I'm like, yeah, that does seem like it would be that way.
Mhm.
Um,
No, I that scene in particular, the nightclub. Um, I love that atmosphere, that vibe in terms of just the pounding music and just the press of bodies just walking everywhere. And
mhm.
this is when I was able to just really picture it in my mind and just bring it out. And I don't know if you might have caught this or not, depending on if you watched the show or read the book called Wool, the TV show called Silo
I've not, yeah.
on Apple TV. That was what inspired that. Um, Basically, it's a underground bunker that's like super super deep, where just humanity lives in these bunkers now. So I would check it. I recommend that book
Okay.
absolutely. The TV show on Apple TV is fantastic. Um, it's 2 great works right there to go check out.
Awesome. I'm glad you brought that up because that was one thing I wanted to do at some point here is like I said, this is my first jump into cyberpunk stuff. So I wanted to be like, okay, well, where do I go from here, right? Like, what else? Either other like more modern contemporary stuff, or like the classics, like what started and sort of defined the genre and that sort of thing. I definitely would. I'm here for the Rex for sure.
Oh, that's a great path. I like that you think this is a good introduction into cyberpunk, which I think it is too, in terms of kind of lightly tapping on the tropes and themes that you do expect to see in the genre. Um, some books that I think would be a great start in terms of being like the like I like to call them the three pillars or the three pioneering books of cyberpunk. With the first one being Neuromancer by William Gibson. He is coined of also basically pioneering the genre in terms of how we see it today. That book, I love it. I love it to death. However, it did take me a little bit to get into. I had to reread the first 50 pages 3 times before I fully
Okay.
grasped it because the prose is just so different than anything I've ever read before. And it just has, he's a unique style that it took a little bit for me to get into. But once I did, that story was a thrill ride. Sorry, thrill ride. It was so much fun. Um, Outside of that, Snow Crash by Neil Stevenson, I think is a fantastic cyberpunk book to get into as well. It's kind of like a play on cyberpunk a little bit because he goes a little bit over the top and he takes those themes and tropes and kind of hits it almost too hard to where it's in a funny way, right? Almost
Okay.
satirical, but he does it in such a fantastic way. There's some really deep themes in there as well. And if you like anything that deals with linguistics in terms of like language,
Hmm.
fantastic book for that. And then this book, the next recommendation is going to be, some people say it's kind of like proto cyberpunk in terms of being cyberpunk before the word cyberpunk was even a thing, and
Sure.
that's Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep.
Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So I've at least heard of those. So I'm not too far outside of the world. I can kind of look over there and see it right now. I just need to run over there and actually pick them up.
Mm-hmm.
But awesome. Yeah, I'll make sure that those are. Shannon is saying Big Book of Cyberpunk. I hope I got your name right, dude. You just told me yesterday. I think that was right. Um, but yeah, that and I do want to come back here because I think this is funny talking about cyberpunk stuff. Do all of your bookshelves run on electricity? Yes, indeed they do. It's the booktuber thing, right? You need the backlighting,
You need
especially
the
me
cool
with the
lighting,
purple.
exactly.
Gotta have the cool lighting. Um, well, that's awesome, dude. And I think that it did feel like a good introduction to me because like I have a vague idea of the tropes of the genre, right? And it felt like those were represented, and it wasn't. I didn't feel like you were like really holding my hand through the thing and like describing it in painstaking detail. But I also felt like it was very easy to understand at the same time. Kind of what was like
Mm-hmm.
the descriptions of Knox City were. It was enough to paint the picture and paint the world, but it wasn't like this overbearing world building thing. It was very much focused on soul and the story.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was really cool. And then actually here, this is a good, maybe a good place to go with this question, right? Is how did you pay homage to the classic stuff while also kind of doing your own thing and, standing on their shoulders and creating your story?
That's a really good question, and I definitely played into some of the major players from the books I just really referenced in terms of Blade Runner, Neuromancer, because those books kind of help define the tropes in terms of what you expect to see in terms of a dystopia, class struggles, high tech, low life. And I wanted to take all those elements and still include them. Like even rain, for example. Rain is very common in the cyberpunk genre. Like literally, my first sentence includes rain. So I wanted to make sure that I capture cyberpunk from the very beginning, first sentence, and also the cover itself, so you know what to expect when coming into it. But I also want to take it a little bit different, and that's why I try to include something that I thought was pretty cool that would also appeal to fantasy readers as well, with that cyber dragon right there.
Mhm.
So I wanted to pull these creatures, these creature bots, into the story in a way that makes sense in this world, but also still appealing to people who primarily focus on fantasy. So, taking the elements that everyone knows, you can find in the cyberpunk genre, while pulling a little bit from fantasy as well, into a pretty, I would say it's not um, like hard sci-fi. I do not go into the technical details and how certain things work, like from core elements in terms of this functions this way. I'm just going to tell you this works, and it blows things up, right?
That's
And
all you need.
you're going to see it happen too.
Yeah. Yeah, for
Hmm.
and that like that really is enough, I think, because especially I don't think of this story as being about the tech. Like it's about the character. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? So I don't. I almost feel like if you would have gone into all those little details, because I'm sure you could have, it would have extended the book. It made it way bigger. But I feel like that almost would have been a disservice and taking the focus away from where it naturally sits, which I think is very satisfying and very cool.
Hmm.
So
I also want, since it is a first-person POV, I think it might feel kind of out of place if our main character was like, "Oh yeah, this functions like this," and then the
sure.
pulse capacitor goes up into this carbine. And I just wanted to make sure, like, this is what this guy is thinking the entire book. So um, I learned that after the fact. That was actually a growing point for me when I was writing this, since this is my debut, my first thing that I ever wrote. A lot of beta readers, actually a couple of them, helped point that out to me in terms of, oh, you're beating the bush on this too much, right? You're focusing on these elements that you shouldn't. I was like, oh, wow, you're right. So that's just something that I learned growing into writing and um, getting into the book itself. So I try to make it, you know, like you just said, character focus. It's a story of Soul's journey on this particular case, on this particular night, in terms of how he's trying to survive and also provide for his family.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a very interesting point as well, right? Like this whole book takes place over one night.
Hmm.
And I think that also adds to the drama in a way, because it's like, and I knew that coming in because you guys had talked about it in that other interview. And I think that added to like, man, like what else can happen,
No.
Like it just kept, and it did that. It kept sort of escalating, and you get to the point, at the end where things start to come together and we answer some things, but just have more mysteries even there at the end. And it was, I think it did a really good, you did a really good job, and on that note and what you were just
Thank you,
talking about
man.
as well. Yeah, of course. The learning process of this being your first book, that I guess one, is this also the first thing you've ever attempted to write, or have you kind of tried stuff in the past? And two, the the learning process was that, you mentioned beta readers, and I imagine that was super, super helpful. But like, what else was going on as you were learning to refine what you were doing and get it in a place where you felt, proud of it and ready to put it out there for other people to see?
Hmm. To answer, I think the middle question in there, have I written anything before? The only thing that I've written was when I was like 8 years old for like second grade, somewhere around there. And I wrote a sci-fi story of a time machine where the main characters go back in time and captures a dinosaur and brings them back to the future. That's the only thing I ever written up until this point of writing this story right here. Um, so there was a lot in my mind going into this. It was definitely a learning process, and I think the first like kind of spot that I went into was watching a bunch of people on YouTube. Actually, a bunch of kind of like, Brandon Sanderson, for example, has some fantastic videos on writing. Brian McNulty, I believe is his name, has some fantastic videos as well. And I was just watching a ton and ton of videos in terms of the craft of writing and making sure that you're hitting the nail on the head in terms of what you're trying to achieve with the story. And also Scott Palmer, I'm not sure if you know him, but he's an indie author who has a fantastic book. He pointed me to a masterclass series by Dan Brown. Dan Brown, he wrote the Da Vinci Code,
Yeah, yeah,
and he has a whole class on how to write thrillers. So I went through that entire class and I learned so much from that.
awesome.
And that's actually where the single night idea kind of solidified for me, because Dan Brown says that a great thriller, a great time span is a single night. He wants to take you from point A to point B with that one character in, a time span that you can see, you can picture in a movie, basically.
Yeah.
That's what I did there.
That's super
So
cool.
once I finished the first draft,
Mhm.
of course I read through it a ton, and I had a few beta readers, and the beta readers, oh my god, if you ever write something, beta readers are a godsend, man.
Yeah, yeah.
They help you out in so many ways. It's also really interesting because beta readers, the way they approach giving you feedback is so different. Like some people get into the nitty gritty in terms of like looking at an individual line and telling you, get rid of this sentence or get rid of
Mhm,
this
mhm.
word, right? Or you need to rephrase this. This sounds clunky. Well, some
Yeah,
people give you feedback for the overall, um, like structure of the chapter itself. Like, oh, this chapter needs more action. This chapter needs more tension, right?
yeah.
So having a few beta readers is, I think, essential, just so you have just various feedbacks from your readers that are reading your work, right?
Sure.
So
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's definitely I definitely will write something at some point. It's just finding the time currently is I have something started, but man, it's hard to find the time.
there we go, man. No, I understand. The time is so hard. It's so hard.
Let me catch up on a couple of these questions here, and then I want to circle back to that. So
Absolutely.
we talked about this for a second, but Josh asking about sort of length of the series.
That's a great question. And Josh, I hope you enjoy your copy too, because I know you posted that really cool video of it. Thank you so much. So the plan is going to be kind of similar to Dresden Files, but not in terms of series length. It's going to be all pretty short books, all under 100,000 words each. But the plan is that after book 4, the series is going to conclude at book 4. But I do have some novella ideas that take place between the main books as well. So there's going to be some books in there, some novellas, maybe some short stories too. But the full story of our main character in this book, 4 books long.
Awesome. That's cool. And I can confirm this is very much not a children's book. It is not. There are some naughty words.
Yeah, that was very interesting to me. The whole idea of cursing, man, because I was trying to gauge, actually on Twitter or X, like some people are completely against cursing in books,
Sure.
where it just turns them off and they put it down. They don't want to read it.
Mhm.
Um, I felt like I was kind of on the edge in terms of having too many curse words versus not having it at all. I could have
Mm,
went down the path of having you know curse words that was specific to this universe, like a
sure.
made up curse word, right? But um, I wanted this to feel relatable as well in terms of the people in the city talk very dirty, right?
Mhm.
Very grungy. It's not a lot of nice people, man. So I wanted
No,
that feeling to come across. And sometimes the curse words, that's how people talk, man. They talk like sailors sometimes,
for
especially
sure.
in big cities.
Yeah, and like especially like a gritty, grimy city like that.
Hmm.
And I think it also just suits the whole tone of the book where he's progressively getting more frustrated.
Hmm.
And that's what happens when you get more and more frustrated, you know? So I think it really I think it fits very well. And it's not distracting or at least for me it's not off-putting. I mean, I love that kind like I don't curse a whole lot myself, but like if it's in a book I'm just like, yeah, this is cool. Like, you know what I mean? For whatever reason, I just have always I don't know.
Hmm.
But yeah, man, and he's sending some stuff out to beta readers. That's amazing. That's cool. Look at this. Look who's here for the swearing.
Whoa,
Hello, Janny.
no
Thank you so
way.
much.
I still need to get to the curse of the Miss Wraith, right?
Yep,
I still
book
need to read
one.
that, man. I need to
Are
get into
you are you doing it next year with all of BookTube? It seems.
that. We have a group read along going on, a group
Yeah,
buddy
man.
read.
John from Talking Story is kind of leading it. He's got a group of like it sounds like it's like 5 or 6 people that are going to be doing live streams like every other month. There'll be one book every other month, and then a bunch of people are like, I'm not in the live streams, but I'm gonna follow along with them, and I'll be there in every chat. I cannot wait to read that series, dude. sounds like it's just
I've heard so many good things.
incredible.
Bryce from Shelf Centered like
Mhm.
swears by it, so
Yeah,
I need to get into it.
I'm
Absolutely.
very. I have the first half of the series back there behind me, and those gorgeous hardcovers that you can't really find anymore. Jenny, I hope you are all good now after the hurricane stuff. I know everything was crazy. You were fine too, right? With all the, you were kind of out of the direct path, I hope.
So the path originally was straight over me, like directly over me, or the eye was
Sweet.
basically coming right over my house. Because I'm in Lakeland, Florida, so I'm in between Tampa and Orlando, and that's
Mhm.
exactly where the path was going
Yeah.
for the longest time. And then it started
Yeah.
veering, going south a little bit and a little bit further south to
Mhm.
where the eye didn't hit us directly, but I'm still kind of further inland to where um, I wasn't hit that bad from the
Good.
hurricane.
Good.
It was just a ton of wind, a crap load of wind, and
Mhm.
it sounded like it was really bad. But the next morning when I went outside, the house was fine. Even my fence was still standing. It's one of those vinyl fences, so like
Sure.
vinyl fences, they pop off like Legos. So my neighborhood
Yeah.
had just um, fence pieces scattered everywhere, but my fence was still standing somehow. So we made it through just fine. Thank goodness.
Get through. Hey, they're still cleaning up. Wow, man. Like Florida booktube crew. Here we go.
Florida, let's
We're
go.
getting through it. It's been a rough hurricane season. North Carolina got it so bad.
Oh my god.
I feel so
Yes.
bad, man. Like my girlfriend and I were actually just in Asheville over the summer, and it was beautiful. It was amazing,
I
and
love Asheville.
oh man, it was so nice, and it's so sad. It's like it's never going to be the same,
Mm.
but it will come back and be amazing nonetheless. Um, oh, look at this boxes of books. Best to find homes. That's true.
Oh,
That's true. Interesting.
here we go.
Um, we did. Jim was back here asking about cyberpunk stuff. We mentioned this a little bit earlier on. If you catch the replay, we can see it in more depth. But we talked about Neuromancer, Snow Crash, and Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep.
There we
Is that
go.
right? So those were kind of the three books you mainly recommended, and you said you were a big fan of the game, the cyberpunk.
Yes, I
Yeah.
am a huge fan of the game. I still need to play the DLC though.
Mm,
What's it called? New Phantom
okay.
Liberty. I
I'd
still
like
need
to
to play that
try it.
one.
I haven't, dude. I haven't played games in like it's been so long. It's just because of time, and I have to be really selective of hobby
Oh, I
stuff.
know.
But I'm hoping I should be done with grad school here in like a year, so I'm hoping to free up a little bit of time before then to try stuff. But
Mhm.
at least once I graduate, we should hopefully be be able to spend a little time. But we will see. Mr. Overbooked, you already have the story mapped out, or are you allowing it to unfold as you go?
That's a good question too. So each book has a central plot idea in terms of what's going to happen to the main character. The story within each book has not been plotted out though, but where it ends has been plotted out. So like for book 2, I knew I wanted our main character to hit a certain point at the end of the book, and that's kind of what I'm writing towards. Book 3, I already know what's going to happen at the end. Book 4, I already know what's going to happen at the end as well. It's just getting there, right? In terms of that hasn't been mapped out yet, but the end has. The end is hopefully going to be a lot of fun.
Good. Well, I'm looking forward to it, man. Do you have like a rough timeline that you're at least aiming for? Obviously, things can change endlessly as you go through the writing process, but do you have
Yeah.
like a rough thing you're shooting for?
So as you just mentioned, in terms of time, time is very hard to find. And with being an indie author, and I don't do this full time. It's just when I have an hour here and there,
Sure.
outside of booktube and reading and family life.
Hmm.
Um, so I my plan is hopefully at least one book a year. In terms of maybe this is very um, ambitious. I have a novella somewhere in between as well,
Hmm.
but we'll see about that. But at least one book a year
Nice.
for the main series. Um, but it's just finding that time, man.
That's the great struggle. I miss being a kid.
I
It
know.
seems like every year that goes by, you just have less time.
I
Uh,
see these other indie authors who are able to push out just like 2, 3 books a year. I'm just like, oh my, how do you
yeah,
do it? One, that's awesome, and then two, how?
yeah.
You know,
Wow. but they're not Wars of Light and Shadow length books. I think is usually unless you're Ryan Cahill, but
This guy.
usually they're a little shorter.
Hmm.
Um,
Right here, short books,
there you
little
go.
tiny books, but each around 100,000 words each. Because my plan in the future for everyone who would be interested is to do something similar to Zach Argyle in terms of his Threadlight series with that
Nice.
really cool omnibus
Yeah, dude.
that was on Kickstarter. Oh my gosh, that thing
Thing's
is so
gorgeous.
nice.
Yeah, I didn't get it. Unfortunately, I missed out on it, but it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
It's stunning.
I need to read the series also, by the way. We have
I need to too.
a question about what's the best lake in Lakeland and why is it Lake Mirror? I don't know the reference, but hey,
Lake
go.
Mirror, man, it's a good lake.
Good lake. People love novellas. Like I feel like this is not really a struggle anymore. Maybe that's just my perception from the outside, but I constantly am hearing people talking about all the novellas that they're reading and everything.
The
I don't know.
novella will be in my mind at the moment. It's going to be something that you can get for free when signing up for my mailing list.
Nice.
So that novella won't be a sale unless you want to buy, because I'm going to also have it in paperback as well. Just so whoever does want the series like on their shelf, they can have it as well. But just like in the Ryan Cahill model, you can get his novella The Fall for free if you sign up for his mailing list, which is a fantastic book, by the way. I'm sure you've already read it.
Oh man.
I
Oh
think
yeah.
it's right behind you. So
Yeah, I love it. The Fall is awesome.
it's
Let's
sick,
let's
man.
get to this really quick because it sounds like he's got to go pretty soon. But if your book was adapted, who do you want to play Soul?
Oh, very hard question. I'm thinking Robert Pattinson. He has the vibe
Okay.
of, now, he already had a fantastic Batman vibe. His version of Batman, I think, is fantastic to where it doesn't feel too sulky, but still kind of menacing at the same time. Even though he's not like an overpowering guy, like he's not huge. He's just a normal looking guy that is also Batman. So,
Sure.
and he's also a fantastic actor as well.
He
He's
is.
played some fantastic roles. I mean, he was fantastic as Edward, right? In Twilight, he was so good.
I didn't see. I only saw the first two. I think I was dragged there by my girlfriend at the time.
Hmm.
Um, I don't remember him being bad by any means though, and like I loved him in Harry Potter, and like you know, I'm a huge biased, huge Harry Potter fan. But we have also. I don't know if you've heard about the ICFA, right? Is that how do you say it that way? ICFA. Janie was telling me about this conference. It's sort of like an academic conference, but also a lot of fantasy authors and stuff just kind of gather. And Philip's been there, Jimmy Nuts has been there, AP's been there,
Oh,
Steven
no way.
Erickson goes there all the time. Apparently, Janie goes there all the time. So I'm strongly considering going if I can, as long as I can swing it, because the drive's not that far for me, and it could be fun. I don't know.
Orlando, you say?
Yeah,
All right.
not too far away. So
That sounds
perfect. And
pretty doable.
I
Because
was
Orlando's
looking.
like 40 minutes away from me.
Oh, beautiful. It's like 3.5, 4 hours for me, but hey, it's still not horrible. It's not a flight, thank goodness.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that'd be cool. Okay, well let me get back to the book for a second. You sir got some really cool cover blurbs, and one of them from an author who we both are massive fans of, and that is Hadrian Marlowe himself, Christopher Rocchio. So um, I'm just curious, just purely out of selfish reasons, what was that process like? Did you just kind of like shoot your shot and hope, or like, were you nervous to have this person you look up to so much read your work? And obviously, it's a slightly different subgenre, but it's still sort of in the sci-fi realm. And
Mm-hmm.
just what was that experience kind of like? And then what was that like seeing the quote he gave you and like having his quote, his name on your
Mm-hmm.
book, and like that must be so cool.
It's absolutely surreal to have right here Christopher Rocchio, his name on the back of my book. It's I still don't really believe it, man. But
Yeah.
he read it while he was actually doing his tour down in Texas.
Nice.
And he read it on the flight over there because I think the flight's maybe a few hours long. He's able to get to it, but in terms of me asking him, it was definitely a just shoot my shot type of email to him
Sure.
in terms of, hey, I'm writing this book. It's only about 70,000 words. If you'd be down, I'll send you a copy, type of thing.
Mhm.
And it was really just, what's the harm in just asking? The worst he can say is no, which is completely fine, right? He is a very busy person, has so many books coming out, um, writing, book number, 7 coming out here at some point. So he is so busy. So it was just more or less, let's just see what happens, to shoot it out there. And, if he responds, fantastic. And when he said, yeah, I'll check it out, I was just like,
Yeah.
what? Mind blown. So at the same time, I was also, of course, nervous for him to read it, because he is also, one of the authors that I look up to in terms of just having fantastic prose, a story that's just captivating, and his story is just growing tremendously. And I'm so happy that more people are reading his work. Um, so one was surreal. I couldn't believe it. And then the actual quote he gave me, I thought it was
Yeah.
hilarious. I actually laughed. But it's also a great way to captivate, or how it actually captures what I'm trying to accomplish in the story. And I'm just going to read it real quick.
Yeah.
A fast-paced, foul-mouthed thriller, the story of a man clinging to his humanity in a city that sold its own a long time ago. I just loved how he used the words foul-mouthed thriller,
Mhm.
because there are some curses, some cursing words inside the book. So
Yeah. A
I just
couple,
thought that was
1 or
hilarious.
2.
So
Yeah,
it was insane, man.
it's a great quote. That's so cool, and I guess along the same line, like, and I sort of mentioned this earlier too, like, the amazing feeling of having that quote and seeing that, but then just having the physical copy of this thing in your hands, chances here, right, that, he's gonna have this in the not too distant future, of having this thing that you worked so long on and thought about so long, having the physical it's not having it on your computer is awesome, but having the
Mhm.
physical thing in your hand, I imagine, is another level of different, and seeing people it's out in the world and people are reading it and they're giving you feedback, and you see the cover art for the first time, like all of these things, that just has to be such a cool and validating feeling, I would imagine, right?
It is. Yeah, every one, I'm just still shocked that people want to even check it out, right? That I think that is a feat in itself, just having people say, "You know what? I want to read that book because, one, it looks cool." That was my whole goal, was to have a book that looked cool,
Yeah,
while
it
still
does.
also being appealing, and also having a very fun and engaging story. Because at the end of the day, this is my first foray into the writing world, and just trying to get something that was, one, um, a complete story that made sense, and also provided a fun and engaging story that was also a little bit relatable. So
Mhm.
when people give me these positive reviews, I'm like, I don't believe you just yet. I don't know if I believe you, to be honest.
Sure.
So
And you
but
wrote it pretty fast, right? Like, it's been all within this year, if I'm not
it
mistaken.
draft one took me 3 months to write it. And then it was about 3 more months of editing with beta readers,
Mhm.
and also Sarah Korn, who was my dev editor, who was fantastic, by the way. She's actually the reason for an entire character in the book, um, and a whole extra chapter because of her. And one of my favorite characters now too. And she is somebody you might know, Nikova, if you remember her at all.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, she
She
was
was
the
cool.
reason.
I want
Um,
more of her in the
I
next
do
book.
too. I do too, man. She's too cool.
Yeah, for sure. I always love, it's part of, like, why I love Valka, right? Like, just the vibe of, like, just that vibe is always so, because they feel similar in some ways to me, just like the energy that they give off when they're on the page,
Mhm.
and that's always so fun. So, yes, more of her, please. Uh, Janny knows Sarah. Janny knows everybody, apparently.
Yes.
Um, do you feel that? So I don't know, right? Because like I said, I'm not in the cyberpunk genre much. This is my first time. But do you feel the same way, that there's just not a whole lot out there, and you gotta kind of dig to find it?
I think there is a lot out there. I also think that it's also making a resurgence at the moment. There's 4 indie authors I know of right now who are writing books that somehow relate to the cyberpunk genre,
Oh,
which I
cool.
think is fantastic. One, because people are seeing that it's a genre that really appeals to people. I think also the success of the game kind of helped propel that a little bit in terms of getting more people into the genre and just knowing, the general vibe of it, right? Maybe not the entire tropes and themes of what the genre is trying to accomplish, but it's getting more people exposed to it. So
Mhm.
more people are seeing, oh, this is really cool. You can do so much with this. Um, so there's four indie authors that I know of who are writing things, and with me writing the genre too, I wanted to be a little bit more exposed as well myself in terms of other books out there.
Yeah.
So there's more authors like Tim Hawken, who wrote a book called Thrill Switch, who is an indie author as well, who wrote um, that book and a prequel novella that's both cyberpunk. And it was so much fun. And then you also have 36 Streets by T.R. Napper, which was a fantastic cyberpunk book. It actually won Best Book of the Year over in Australia a few years back,
Wow, that's
which
awesome.
is a cyberpunk genre book that's told in in an Asian city. Um, that one was so much fun, man. So
Sounds
I
really
just
cool.
I just love how the cyberpunk genre, like, you can sort of define it in terms of what to expect, but each book that I've read in the genre just feels distinct and unique from each other. And I love that each
Yeah,
book can really feel like its own, little flavor of cyberpunk.
sure. This might be a dumb question, but the when I read this and when I like I'm sort of tangentially aware of like what cyberpunk is, like the general vibe. And one of the things that I always think of is like Japan. I always think of Tokyo for some reason. I have that association where it's like the bright neon lights
Mhm.
and just stuff like that. Is there actually like a connection there that you're aware of, or is that just me making some weird connection
No,
in my head?
there is a lot of influence from Tokyo, from Japan, in terms of the cyberpunk genre and its origins. Like samurai, for example,
Mhm.
um, there's a huge component of that kind of helped um, propel the aesthetic that you see in the genre
Yeah.
into the different media that you see, from books, from video games to TV as well. So there's a huge influence from Tokyo, Japan.
Okay. Cool. I'm
Um,
not crazy.
no, you're not crazy. You're not crazy. And in my book, I try to not focus on Asian influences too much because I want it to feel slightly unique in its way, but still
Mhm.
having neon, of course, because neon's cool. I mean,
Yeah. Of course.
look at the bookshelf, man. Neon's
Yeah.
awesome.
Absolutely. Like we talked about earlier, we got to have our cool colors. It's fun. Um, someone say you look like Gordon Hayward. I don't know if you're an NBA fan, but you do look like Gordon Hayward for sure.
Gordon Hayward. I'm gonna Google this now.
I think he just retired, actually. He's not that old. He just had injuries.
Oh, I can kind of see that
Yeah.
ish.
Um, so something I want to talk about. I want to make sure I get to this before we run too late here. Is we mentioned how difficult it is to find the time, and you are somebody who obviously debut book. You're not making millions every year yet from your writing alone. So when you go to do this, right, you go to set off on this journey and you have your full-time job and you have a family and if I'm not mistaken, like you have a kid who's very young still, right, that has its own time commitments and all of that, that it's, I imagine, difficult for you to find a big chunk of time where you can sit down and get into a flow state and like really dig in and do your thing. So I guess how have you found that process of balancing trying to do this cool writing thing that like you're really inspired to do and it means a lot to you and you really want to do it without letting it impact the things that you still have to do and want to do, of course, with the rest of your life? Like how are you navigating going through all that stuff?
It is very difficult. It's definitely a lot of time management in terms of the hobbies that we have. Which one takes priority for a given day,
Mhm.
almost, because one, I'm also a booktuber like you, so I want to make booktube content and push out videos in terms of what I'm reading and what books did I love last month, and what books am I going to read next month, like top 10s, all those type of videos. I want to keep pushing those out.
Yeah.
I enjoy video games as well, but it has been a while for me as well where I've actually played it. And then also exercise. I like to go to the gym as well. So usually I find like a block of time in the morning, and it's kind of like divvied up between what can I do for those few hours in terms of, do I work out? Maybe. Do I read? Maybe. Do I write? Maybe. So it's like whichever one comes into my brain that morning is like, all right, I'm going to focus on that today. Right.
Yeah.
So unlike before when I wrote this book, this took priority over BookTube. It pushed out the working out a little bit, and of course it pushed out games for a while, because I just wanted to really hone in and just buckle down and just start getting this thing written on the page. Now I'm approaching it a little bit differently, because I feel like I almost went too hard with focusing on this only, because I wrote it in 3 months, which is great, but it was the only thing I focused on for a while. So this time I'm taking a little bit slower, man. I'm taking it a little bit slower. I still think I should have a first draft early-ish next year, at least the pace that I'm going. I got the first 4 chapters done, and I freaking love it. I can already see the growth from when I first wrote draft 1 of this thing compared to what I have so far in book 2. At least in my mind, right? I feel like it's a lot better. We'll see.
I'm sure it is. Yeah.
the
And
betas
it
are
should be, right? Like, you should look back at when book 2 comes out, you should look at book 1 and be like, oh man, like I could have done this and this and this. Now, it doesn't mean that it's bad. It just means you're growing and getting better,
Yeah. So it's just
That's
whatever I wake up with in terms of what I want to focus on that day until I go to work, right? 8 a.m. Go to work, and then from there I usually focus on work, family time for the rest of the day, unless I have like a scheduled podcast like this with you. Besides that, I usually only focus on those 3 things in the morning.
Nice.
And that's it.
Makes sense. That's kind of, I think that's like the grand life skill that I'm trying to develop these days, is the compartmentalizing your time and your energy, and like not trying to multitask too much. And like when I'm doing this thing, I'm just doing that thing, and letting like getting better at prioritizing, and like just that whole process of juggling all this different, it's because like you're saying, it's hard when you got all this stuff and there's things that you have to do. And I imagine there's mornings where you just don't really have the energy to edit this chapter or to whatever, but you got to decide, am I going to force myself to do it, or am I going to, I don't want to force it. Let me see how it feels tomorrow. Or I guess maybe that's a question too. Like, do you give yourself that flexibility to kind of take it day by day? It kind of sounds like that, versus being like, I have this word count target that I must hit each day or each week or whatever. Like the balance of structure and flexibility.
Yeah. So with this being part-time for me still, at least for the foreseeable future, unlike Ryan Cahill, where he has a 2,000, it's either 2,000 or 1,000 word count goal he has for every single day. I do not place that on myself at the moment. It's whatever I feel I can get across that day, whatever comes across. I'm still waiting to hit that point in this book to where the words just flow off, man. Because there was a few times when I was writing this where the words were just coming to me. I felt like I was Jim Carrey in the movie Bruce Almighty, where he was just typing the keyboard like this. So there were a few moments when I felt like that, and I was just getting through like 2,000-3,000 words in a given session. I haven't hit that yet in book number 2, because it's been a lot of world building, trying to make sure I get the technology right in terms of the new things I'm introducing into the world. I want to make sure I get these things right before I start like diving head into it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. I'm sure you'll get there too. Like once that process kind of smooths out, I'm sure you'll hit that, and that'll be a wonderful feeling, I'm sure.
Then we'll have the Bruce Almighty moment. Just typing it out, man.
Yeah, that's cool. That's like, I don't know if you've had this experience when I've actually found the time to like sit down and okay, I have an hour to try to write some stuff or whatever. That stuff is like circulating in my head so much that when I finally have the time to sit down, it's just like it just comes out really quick. And obviously, it's going to be rough, and you need to edit and all this kind of stuff, right? But
Oh yeah.
at least the broad brushstrokes come out really quickly. Do you? I know some people have that, and other people, it's like there's so much going on that they don't really have the mental capacity to be thinking about the thing all the time. And when they sit down, it's like, okay, now I'm going to sit down and think about this. Oh wait, now I like so you don't really get that much done for a while, and then it's this weird thing. So I guess do you find that you have the things the scenes cemented in your head before you sit down and put it on the page, or is it really just flowing in the moment as you're going through?
That's a good question too. I think the scenes are all in my head at the moment. It's just a matter, like the book is done in my mind, man. The book
Sure.
is done up here.
Yeah.
It's just getting it written out. Um, so like tomorrow, if I'm able to get to it, like I already know exactly what I want to write.
Mhm.
It just depends on the priorities of tomorrow, how I feel when I wake up as well. Maybe a book that I'm reading. I'm actually reading a book called Soul Fraud right now, by Andrew Givler,
Mhm.
which is fantastic. Oh my god, he's also an indie author who has a YouTube channel. Um, so I'm reading through that. Sometimes that book, whatever I'm reading, just pulls me in to where I'm like, I'm just focused on reading right now because I'm just,
Yeah.
um, almost, what do you call it, induced into the book. I'm just reading it, man. I'm getting
Yeah,
through
yeah.
it. It's hard to pull away from doing that, but all the scenes are in my mind in terms of what I want to happen. So,
Awesome. Do you Alex is asking, do you visualize those scenes like a movie in your head, or are they kind of
oh yeah.
more basic than that? Okay,
hmm
cool. Yeah. See,
Actually, I
that's
got
how I
the
sorry, I didn't mean to
feedback
interrupt
from
you. Go ahead.
no, you're fine. From Ryan Cahill when I was talking to him a while back, where he was like acting out battle scenes with like a sword in terms
Yeah,
of
yeah.
when you swing like this, it hits another sword like this, like what's going to happen. So I try to do that in terms of like punches or jumping or just like really just visualize it in my mind in terms of, okay, this character's here. Does it make sense visually for him to do something and then someone reacts to it, right? The response needs to make sense in terms of, you know, anatomy, in terms of like
Sure.
how a human actually moves, even if they're modified, right? So it's
Yeah.
all it's definitely visual based, and that'd be crazy if it became a movie one day too. That'd be
You
crazy.
never know, man. You
You never
never
know.
know. This booktube thing is crazy. It can do some cool stuff. Um, so I want to be respectful of your time, and we both probably need to get some sleep before too long here. But one thing I want to end on is sort of you're working on book two. You have some rough points mapped out for the 4-book series and some ideas for some other stories that could be in the world. And you're starting out on this. Well, I mean, you're into the journey already, right? You're not just starting out. You have the book out. You've been doing this, and so as you sort of think about all the stuff that's coming up in the future, like what are you the most excited about? What feels the most fun? What feels like that's just really pulling at you to just like, yeah, go that direction?
It has to be getting the cover, man. It has to be that for me. Um, so I'm making it almost like a reward for myself, to where when I hit 40,000 words in book two, that's when I'm going to commission the cover for book
Oh,
two.
cool.
Because I already have what I want on the cover. I already have the scene in mind. And it's going to be, in my mind, I picture it as freaking epic, man. It's
Sure.
even cooler than this, which I love. I freaking love
Oh,
this
I
cover,
love this
man.
cover. Yeah.
Um, Also, the cover artist, her name on Instagram is Ninja Joe _art. and she is primarily a cyberpunk artist, and she has some fantastic artwork. And that's a whole story, is getting the artwork. In terms of, I didn't know where to go first regarding artwork. I'm
Sure.
seeing all these amazing cover reveals from like Broken Binding, in terms of like Jeff Round putting out these fantastic covers. They were just so beautiful, right? It's like, how do I do that? Right?
Yeah.
How do I go down that path? So I was going down a few different routes, going down Fiverr.com, if you're familiar with that, going down Reedsy a little bit.
Sure.
And like I was just jaw struck at some of the prices for some of
Yeah.
these, which makes sense if they have the portfolio and the experience, right?
Yep.
But being my first, introduction into writing, I was like, I don't know if I can stomach a $2,000 investment into a cover. So I was just looking around, and I found someone on Fiverr actually who looked promising, and actually took pictures, screenshots of Ninja Joe's artwork. It sent it to that person on
Okay.
Fiverr to use as inspiration, and it came back and found out that the artwork was using elements of AI. So I said, "Oh, I cannot use this. I just can't."
Sure.
And that's when I was like, you know what? Let me just ask Ninja Joe Art, Katerina, if she does commissions, and she did. And again, this was another Hail Mary moment in terms of me just sending an email like
Sure.
Christopher Rocchio to say, hey, are they going to respond to me? Hopefully, but we'll find out. And she did, like same day. I was like, oh,
That's awesome.
my heart dropped. I was like,
Yeah.
this is the cover artist that I want. Like, she has fantastic artwork. Exactly the genre, the vibe that I'm going for. And then when I saw this thing, I was like, oh,
Yeah.
come on, please. So
Yeah. That's awesome. I'm glad that you had the Instagram name. I'm definitely gonna go check her stuff out and follow her. Whenever I find I'm a very long ways away from releasing something, right? I'm just trying to find some time to start it even, but like whenever I hear about an artist that I like their stuff, I always follow them and I'm trying to keep up with, options and just so to try to shorten that process, right? Of like so that I know who I want to go to when the time eventually comes. But yeah, that's the art. That's one of the cool things about special editions too, right? Is just the
yes.
art. Just man, it really brings the story another dimension. It's so cool to see. It's so cool.
That's actually really funny that we talked about these special editions. Like I being a book collector as well, I have a ton of special editions, but I can't remember the last book that I've read that was a special edition. Right? It's
Yeah.
like usually a book that I've read on Kindle or I listen to the audiobook. So I'm trying to change that here in the very soon future with one of these Broken Binding books.
Nice. What are you thinking? What are you ended up into?
I'm really leaning towards the 3 body problem right here.
I really want to check that out. Another cover that's just mind blowing.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
And I haven't watched the TV show either yet on Netflix because I wanted to read the book first.
Sure. That's same. Yeah. I'm on the waiting list for the sci-fi sub. I just didn't get on it yet. But
I'm sorry, man.
see.
I'm sorry.
We'll get in there. We'll get in there at some point. Well, dude, this has been really fun to kind of pick your brain about writing and your process and your experience. And I know like not some of it is selfish for myself because it's a world I want to step into. But I know it seems like actually quite a few of the people who've watched these streams are really interested in or they're already working on writing. And I know that I've gotten some really good feedback about just some of the conversations that we've had. So I appreciate you being open and sharing all that stuff. And I'm just stoked for you, man. Like I said, I was a fan of your channel for a long time, and seeing you do this it's inspiring and it's just cool. And I'm excited for you. And um, I think we collectively as a booktube community all wish you the best. And everyone likes to support each other in the community, right? So I know I've seen quite a few other people, even if they haven't read it yet, that they have at least picked up your book, which I think is fantastic. And hopefully they read it soon, man, because it's awesome. So thank you for taking the time. I appreciate it very much.
No, thank you. Thank you for talking about my booktube channel, right? I mean, that was a huge milestone for me. So I appreciate you checking out the channel. That's huge in itself right there. And then also, of course, getting the book and having a good time. I can't tell you, it means the world, man. So thanks, man.
My pleasure.
I
My
appreciate
pleasure.
it. I'm looking forward to seeing what you put out as well in the future, and I need to join one of your live streams as
Yeah,
well
thanks.
because you're bringing in some heavy hitters out here. You got
I'm
Christopher
trying.
Rocchio. Who do you
I'm
got
trying.
next? Anyone crazy?
I got Vera on Saturday. That if anyone watching this isn't familiar with her channel, it's awesome. And she grew really fast. Her videos are fantastic. She's I think she has a really unique ability to uh, formulate and express some like very comprehensive thoughts on things that are super cool. She's from Poland, right? So she has a lot of cool Witcher content,
Mm,
and yeah, she's great. So that'll be super fun. I got some other stuff in the works I don't want to talk about yet, but we
sure.
will announce
Keep it under
when it's
wraps.
there. The last thing, I'll plug this one last time. November 6th, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, live stream BookTubers Dungeons and Dragons game. It's going to be so cool.
Whoa.
Going to be me, Chance Dillon, who was in the chat earlier. We got John from Talking Story. We got Brian from Belltube, and then my buddy Will, who is a fantasy writer, is going to DM for us, and it's going to be super fun. I have a whole video on my channel talking about it and some plans for that in the future and stuff. So we got some cool streams coming up, man. It's gonna be fun.
That's exciting, man. Yeah, keep up the good work. That's
Thanks. I
awesome.
mean, you too. Man. I'm excited for your next versus video. That'll be an interesting comparison. I saw your Instagram poll.
I know.
So,
Very interesting. People are wanting Harry Potter versus the Fellowship of the Ring.
yeah,
Like, oh, all right. I mean,
yeah,
it kind of works. We'll
yeah.
we'll play it. We'll play it up by ear here.
That was my initial reaction was just like, but then I thought about it for a second, and I was like, this actually could be pretty interesting. So we
Yeah,
shall see.
I
It'll be
know.
fun. Be fun to watch. But all right, guys, thank you for watching this. If you're here in the replay, leave me a comment. Go make sure that you follow Aaron's channel. Go buy his book. Support this man. He deserves it. He's awesome. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, guys. Keep reading.